Good morning. Good morning. It's Charmaine Hammond. I'm so excited to be here today talking about how to kickstart the new year. Can you believe that 2015 is almost over and we're rolling into 2016? The reason I wanted to set up this webinar today is because this is one of my favorite times of year, the time of year where we transition from the current year to the new year, and it's an opportunity to reflect on everything we've done, accomplished, how we've grown, who we've become, and to really ramp it up for next year. So my theme for next year is, I love the word epic. It's going to be an epic year, and it's going to be a year that I start strong because I'm finishing strong. And that's one thing I wanted to really capture today, is the importance of starting your year off strong so that you are having a successful year. And part of how we do that, of course, is finishing strong. I have a friend of mine years ago, we were talking about New Year's resolutions, and the question was, do they work or do they not work? So let's have you guys all go into the chat box and share your opinion. Do you set New Year's resolutions? If you have set them, do they work? Have you found it hard to keep your New Year's resolutions in the forefront? So we'll hear from a few of you. And also, while you're typing in the chat box, why don't you let me know where you're from? I know on the Facebook page and in the event registrations, we have people from all over the world. So I would love, love, love to see who's with us today and where you're listening from. Catherine says, never, never with exclamation marks, because they don't work. And Catherine says, love it, 2016, the epic year. That's going to be my theme all year, the epic year. Denise says, they only work when you stick to them for longer than January. Denise, that is so true. You know, one of the things that I think about with New Year's resolutions is something that Jack Canfield, who is one of my mentors, said, that you've got to have your goals in front of you. And so I changed actually from calling them New Year's resolutions to my goals and commitments. And just that slight change in wording had a big difference in my commitment to them. It wasn't something I had to do. It was something I chose to do. And the mindset around resolutions, or goals, as I like to call them, has a very big impact on your success. Now, one of the things I learned from Jack Canfield was the importance of writing your goals down. And we did an exercise in a workshop that I was in with him. And he had us write down our big epic goal. He calls it a BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. So Jack had us write down our overarching goal on a recipe card, just one of those little recipe cards. And I chose a colored card because it would stick out for me. And then what he had us do is write down 5 or 6 action steps that would help us achieve that goal. And then he invited us to actually write those action steps on a number of cards that we kept with us. So I actually created 6 sets of these cards. That's right, 6 sets. And they traveled with me in my briefcase, in my purse. I had a set at home where I did my makeup in the mirror. I actually had a set in my car for the 3 minutes that you have at a red light. Not obviously when you're driving, but the whole point of this was that when your goals are in front of you, it's much easier to achieve them. And lots of us, when we do New Year's resolutions, we create the goal or the resolution in our mind, but we don't stick to them. And Denise said 30 days is a real falling point for people. And I would agree with you, Denise. 30 days is really what the researchers say it takes us to create a new habit. And I see it all the time in the corporate work that I do. When I go in and speak and train for corporations, we have teams that are inspired and excited to do something different in their organization. And if they're going to fall off the tracks, it usually, as Denise said, about 30 days in, because we revert back to what we know or what we've always done. So lots of comments coming in here. Let me just catch up here, and welcome, welcome, welcome for all of you that are joining us. Sylvia from Guelph, Ontario. Oh, I love this. Sylvia says, no, I set intentions instead. Kelly says, I set goals, not resolutions. Kelly's from Edmonton. Hey, Kelly, how you doing? And then Roland, oh, I like this. He says, I resolve daily. Janet says, I don't set New Year's resolutions. Deborah says, no, I try to focus. That's my favorite word of 2015 is focus. And Roland is from South Carolina. Hey, Roland. And then Rita Ann says, I think you need to set goals all year round and not just for the new year. And Rita Ann is from Millet. Hey, Rita. And Wendy says, good morning, Charmaine. My resolutions help my determination for the first few months in that the progress is progress. So I say, yes, they help future my goals and the steps are worth it. I agree. The steps are probably one of the most important parts. Roland says, inspiration beats motivation. Isn't that the truth? Glenda says, she's from Sherwood Park. No to no year's resolutions. I set goals and I work with them all year long, and it is going to be an epic year. Great comments. Keep them coming. I'll be checking in. Now, today's webinar, this is part of a series of the Global Influence series, and I'm co-hosting them with Teresa de Grosbois, a dear friend, the leader of the Evolutionary Business Council. And I know lots of you have been on the webinars already with Teresa and I, and we've interviewed speakers bureaus, we've talked about bestseller book launches, we've talked about sponsorship, planning speaking tours, and there is lots more to come in this series. In January, we're kicking off actually a 6-week virtual class that I'll talk to you about later. Now, part of why we want to pull these series together is that it's time, it's time. We're going into a new year, and what a better time than now to start looking at what did we learn in 2015 that we can apply forward. One of the tools that I use, and I promised you on today's webinar we were going to talk about this, is what I call the review and learn process. Now, for those of you that don't know me, let me introduce myself a bit so that I can put the context around what we're talking about. I've had my business for 20 years, and it's rebranded. It's changed a few times in those 20 years. It started out as a mediation and dispute resolution company because I had left my career in the corporate world. I was actually a correctional officer. Now, for those of you that know me, I'm 4'11 3/4, and that 3/4 is very important. So I'm 4'11 3/4 and a correctional officer for 10 years. I loved that career because it taught me so much about people, collaboration, and what needs to happen to make organizations work. And a lot of what I learned was coming from things that just didn't fit with my values in that system. When I left the correctional field, it was because I traveled across Canada to follow the man I love, Christopher. And where we moved in Canada, in northern Alberta, there was no jail. So I absolutely had to change careers. It was sort of changing careers because there was no other choice. I went back to school, got certified as a mediator because I really enjoyed the process of collaboration and conflict resolution. And that's what inspired me to open up my own company. That was in 1997. We're going towards 20 years. That was 96, actually, going towards 20 years in business. It has rebranded. And what I found in that time was that my passion is really about speaking and training and writing. In that time frame, I became an author, and like many of you on the webinar today, you're an author, an accidental author. How many of you on the webinar today are an author, are writing a book, have 100 books inside your head, and you just can't wait to get them out? Just put your comments in the chat box, and I'll come back to them. But I wrote a book about my dog who quite literally changed my life. He was a house-wrecking, destructive dog with the biggest heart. And part of how we gained control or helped his behavior was he became a therapy dog. And the process of Toby and I going into the hospital every Wednesday together transformed my life. And I learned so much from him. And I felt compelled to share the story. I didn't know how to share it. I was sharing the story in my speaking engagements with my corporate audiences because I speak on leadership, team building, and resilience and conflict resolution. And the stories fit so well. And then I submitted a chapter for Chicken Soup for the Soul. I know many of you have that book. Some of you are in that book. And that's where things opened up. I learned to become an author. I wrote my first book on Toby's terms. And since then, that was in 2010 that was published. And since then, I have 5 other books, and I'm featured in 6 others. So it's been quite a journey, and every year just gets better and better, and every year is full of new learning for me and new growth. So the process that I use that I wanted to come back to is called the review and learn. Now, the review and learn, oh, we have lots of authors here on the, let me catch up here. Thanks everyone for your comments. Wow, 2 in the bag, no, I'm nipped in the bud, but 2 books, 1 more coming. We've got need to get the books out of my head and onto paper. Catherine has 100 outlines and 2 books. Denise has 8 books out and 2 more 2 more in the works. Something else exciting coming. I've written 1 book. Wow, this is awesome. So we've got authors, and someone says, Happy New Year. Hi there. Happy New Year to you too. And some have contributed. Rita Ann says, I was privileged to write a chapter in the book, Mentoring Women Leaders, with 24 other fabulous women. So part of what we're going to talk about today, whether you're a speaker, an author, a trainer, a coach, an entrepreneur, this applies to you. It also applies to you if you're a nonprofit organization or a corporation, because every year we transition from the current year into the new year. And there's things that we bring along with us that worked, and there's things that we decide we're going to leave in the current year. The process I use it with my current corporate audiences, is called the Review and Learn. I'm going to email everybody a copy of the worksheets that I use when you get the link to the recording. But you may want to grab a pen and paper now. I'm going to run through the 4 distinct areas of a review and learn process. Then what we're going to talk about are the 3 things I really think we need to bring into 2016. And then we're going to end off talking a little bit about the whole concept of collaboration and what that can look like in 2016. Now, in terms of the review and learn process, there are 4 distinct areas to this. The first question that you ask yourself, and I actually write the answers down, and the reason I do this, it's really to get out of my head. I find that, my head is full of stuff already. Like some of you on the chat box, I have 10 books going on up there. There's things I want to do, be, and accomplish. So part of the process of writing it down is it takes the busyness out of your head. But I also have found with me that if it's written down, I am far more accountable to myself and to other people. Now, the first question in the review and learn process is, what went well for you? So just take a moment here. Let's do this as an interactive workshop. What went well for you in 2015? So we're only looking at that 1-year time frame. If you want to share, put it on the chat box. What went well for you? While you're working on that, I'll share a couple for me. One of them that went really well for me is learning new technology. I get concerned about new technology. It's one more thing I have to learn and one more thing I have to remember, but I'm in love with this platform, Webinar Jam. I've used a lot of different platforms for webinars and conference calls, and I think what I love about this platform is it allows me to not just have my slides up on the screen, it allows me to feel more engaged with people. We have an active chat box going on. I love video. It's easy to share. So that's one of the things that went well for me. I think another one that went well for me is this year, our common theme was all about sponsorship and all about collaboration. And 2015 was really epic for me. 2016 is even going to be more epic. But my big win in 2015 was hosting our Million Acts of Kindness tour. And I know some of you that are on the chat box right now, you were huge champions for my Million Acts of Kindness tour. Thank you for that. The Million Acts of Kindness tour, we traveled in a sponsored RV, a 32-foot motorhome. And let me just say, I had never been camping before this. So that was a learning in itself. 32-foot RV sponsored by Fraser Way RV here in Canada. And we traveled 10,000 miles, which is about 14,000 kilometers across North America over 6 weeks. With one mission, to make the world a better place through kindness. And that was a real win, what went well. So I've got some of you talking in the chat box. Let me read some comments. Roland says, let me go back to the beginning here. So we have lost 40 pounds and increased my confidence. Wow, Denise, that's awesome. Congratulations. Roland says, 1-year anniversary of Hangout series on internet marketing. Way to go. Lana says, huge step forward towards my own personal growth, development and focus. And Bonnie, thank you. She says, that was such an awesome tour. I have to agree with you. It was awesome. It was life-changing for me as well. Roland says, nice, Denise, and cool, Deborah. And Jean says, I created my first Kindle ebook. Way to go. So the first process of the review and learn is to look at everything that went well. When I do this work with corporations, there's a tendency when you have a team of people, whether they're executives or frontline staff, it doesn't matter the composition of the team. I find one tendency that happens all the time. People tend to go towards what went wrong. It's always where we start. And again, it's all about mindset. One of my favorite mentors who speaks about mindset is Harrison Klein. I love Harrison Klein. And he taught me many years ago the power of the words I am. Two really important words, maybe the most important words in our language. And what I learned from Harrison is how we frame what went well and what was a challenge is really, really important in terms of what we do with it. So I remember going into one of the corporate audiences I was training with and going through the review and learn, and we were on question 1. And before I could actually say what went well, people had their hands up to share what went wrong, who dropped the ball, who didn't complete a commitment. And it changes the whole conversation of what comes next, because the mindset there was based on scarcity, it was based on blame, it was based on judgment. So we want to remember what Harrison talks about is creating that mindset for success. And part of how we do that is starting with what went well. And the what went well is really important because there is a tendency for us as we have an achievement, we plow through the rest of the year and we're not always taking stock or celebrating our wins. So I encourage you all to celebrate your wins. If any of you on the chat box are people who do celebrate your wins, please put it in the chat box. I think it's important. And Annette says she hosted several public seminars in 3 cities and conducted a new confidence leadership seminar. Way to go. That's great, Annette. So question 1, what went well? And I actually print these out. I now type them and I print them out and I keep them in a binder. And I actually pull the binder out when I'm starting new projects. I not only use the review and learn process at the end of the year, I use it every time I complete a project, every time I do a launch, every time I implement something new. Because what I've discovered is the learnings, if you can do this review and learning right after that change or implementation or the end of the year, it's fresh in your mind. And what you write down helps you next time you do something similar. Sylvia says, for sure, celebration is key to staying motivated. Janet says, I celebrate the wins. And Denise says, 2 years ago, I started high-fiving myself for things as simple, I gotta put my glasses on here, things as simple as exercising. Celebrate the small victories because they add up to bigger ones. Well said, Denise. And Jenna says, I hosted a global blogging and reading program. Wow, for classrooms around the world. That's amazing. And certified as a top performer in sales, says Lana. Joy says, I do the review and celebration every week. What a way to stay on top of things, Joyce. That's great. Marion says, I had 4 trips to the US with my business. Woohoo! And Rita Ann says, I treat myself often with little accomplishments when little accomplishments are achieved, since it's so important to look after you first. That is true. It's one of the reasons I'm inspired to talk about resilience. And as entrepreneurs, we have to be resilient. Our business will only thrive and be stable when we are resilient. Now, number 2, we've talked about what went well. Number 2, this is where we get into what went wrong. But I like to say, what was a challenge? What were some of the difficulties or the bumps that you had to manage and handle over the year or at the end of that particular launch? Today, we're talking about end of year. What were some of the challenges? Wow, you know, for me, some of the challenges were just time. Can anyone relate to that? And I'm not talking that I had too much time on my hands. I'm talking that managing my time and managing my energy was a challenge. I learned how to deal with that differently, though. Instead of managing time, I focused on working where my energy was, wherever possible. We have more comments coming in here. Oh, Pat, this is so cool. Pat says, I have a happy jar and I put notes of my achievements in there. That is cool. Bonita, hey, Bonita. She says that I created an online learning course. Wow, this is great, for emotional intelligence for success. And the learning during the process was amazing. Technology was just one. And Wendy, way to go, says, I graduated from interior design school this spring. And Pat says, time is definitely a challenge. Bonita says, yep. So there's a couple of tips I learned to manage my time, and if it's okay with you, I'll share them. I was reading a book by Darren Hardy, and it was actually after my friend Benita and her fiance Mike had hosted Darren Hardy in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And I was so inspired by his presentation. And he's the publisher of Success Magazine, my favorite magazine. And I was reading about how he managed his time and energy, and he talked about this too. And he spoke about the importance of identifying for your business 3 key areas that are your profit centers, your revenue streams. And he suggested that we try working 60 to 90-minute blocks in those 3 areas before we go and accomplish anything else during the day. So I thought, I'm going to give this a try. I'm really going to commit to this. And I gave myself 30 days. Funny, we're talking about 30 days. I gave myself 30 days just to see what the impact was. Was I perfect with it? No. Did I miss some days? Absolutely, because I was on the stage speaking or on an airplane traveling to speak. But I really gave it a concerted effort. And here's what I found. I first of all identified my 3 areas. So in my company, my 3 profit centers or my revenue streams are speaking. That's number 1. Number 2 is books and products. And then number 3 is sponsorship, which we'll talk about later. So those were the 3 areas. So I would get up in the day and I set my timer. I turned off my email. I turned my texting off. Everything was off. And then I just focused on these 3 areas. And I found 90 minutes a little bit of a long stretch for me. So I shortened it to 60 minutes. How can I say this? What I accomplished in 60 minutes was off the charts. My to-do list just was getting so quickly shortened because my focus, somebody mentioned focus earlier, my focus was there and my attention was on the profit part of our business because we do have to focus there. That was one area that I learned not only to manage my time, but to work where my energy was. I found that I have a really strong burst of energy in the morning. I love to work when the sun has just come up and the birds are tweeting and there's not a lot of traffic out yet. That for me is my energy time. And then I get a burst of energy about 10 o'clock at night, which is sometimes how I do my writing. Kelly says, nice, I'm going to try that. And Roland has a comment here, working with others who are as or more negative and keeping my positivity. Catherine, this is really cool. She says, the terrible T's, time and technology. Yes. Annette says, I created and conducted a relationship seminar with my hubby. 10 wonderful couples attended. Jenna says, I love the idea of that happy jar. Pat says, time is definitely a challenge. So part of what we have to learn is how we work well. That's why these review and learn processes are so useful. So what went well? What was a challenge? And write everything down, because as we start to identify the challenges, it can identify what we may need to learn more about. May identify an area we need some coaching or mentoring on. It may identify an area that we need to do more skill development on. For example, some of you, it was technology, same with me. The third question in the review and learn process, we've got what went well, what was a challenge. Next one is, what did you learn? This for me is probably the most telling question. What did you learn? A lot of the learnings were not, what did you learn about other people? A lot of the learnings I had was what I learned about myself, and some of them were, a little bit revealing and made me feel a little vulnerable. But the process of going through it was very powerful. And what I learned this year was there's certain things I am not good at. Graphic design, let me tell you that. Graphic design, I suck at it. I admire people who have that creative genius. It's not mine. And I found that I would, because I left a couple of projects to the last minute of needing to get some promotional materials done, it was a weekend, so I thought I'd just go and design my own poster. What was I thinking? I'm not good at this. I don't even have the right tools or software. I'm not creative in that type of artistic format. And I think it gave me gray hair by the end of the weekend. And I had the ugliest looking graphic you'd ever seen. The discovery for me on what did you learn, which is question number 3, is work where your genius is. My husband actually asked a really important question that I get pretty emotional about because it was sort of a whoa question. He looked at the graphic and he said, Charmaine, how much did that graphic cost our company? And I said, well, I did it. And he agreed that it wasn't very good. But I said, I did it. And he said, and what is your time worth? What is the value of your time? And so anyhow, we calculated the number of hours that it took me to do this not attractive graphic that I was going to use. Well, I didn't, but I had planned on it. And that, it was a $1,500 graphic. And my graphic designer did it in 45 minutes. And it was nowhere near that amount of money. The lesson for me was I needed to make sure that when I was planning that I had systems in place to support all the steps that needed to be done, and that I needed to work where my genius is. So now I have a policy. If it's not my genius, I don't do it. I have a team right now, about 13 people that work for us. And the reason, you might be asking, well, why didn't you just phone your graphic designer in the first place? Great question. Why didn't I? Because I didn't want to bother her on a weekend. And the first thing she said to me when I called her on Monday, she said, Charmaine, we've worked together for years. Phone me, text me, email me. If I can't do it, I'll just say no. And that was the other lesson, is that it's important for us to get comfortable with what I call the ask. Now I see the chat board getting a little hot here. Let's see what we've got coming in. Design, Marion, could you give me a shout? Could have given me a shout, she says. Yeah, see, isn't that the truth? We get stuck in our, I got to get this done now, and we don't even look at all the resources around us. So thank you, Marion. I'm going to remember that next time. And Lana says, I learned to outsource what I'm not good at. I agree with you. Don't waste my time for a poor result. And I know better. So for me, the learning was I have to just remember what I know and trust it. And Rita Ann says, knowing that I could handle being foreman for our renovations. Wow, when our contractor walked out on us, made me realize that I can do it and anything is possible. Deborah says, stick with your magnificent, I can't even say the word, magnificence, and find how to JV with people who can do things for you. Yes, learn to ask. That's so true. In fact, I've written a number of articles about asking, because that was one of my biggest journeys that I had to overcome in 2010 when I started writing my book about Toby. Annette says she learned to plan further ahead. Jenna says, you could have asked me too. You've helped me with so much. I would love to give back. Aw, thank you. This is why I do this review and learn process, because it reminds us of stuff we already know. And look what just happened here, a little conversation, this outpouring of support, this outpouring of collaboration. So the other lesson I learned about myself is trusting that I have the answers. And I know I have amazing people in my circle of champions that would just crawl through glass for me. I know that. And the issue was I simply didn't ask. Now, number 4 in the review and learn process, number 4 is, what will I do differently? So looking at what went well, what was the challenge, what did I learn? Now it's, what will I do differently? And when you write all these down and keep them in a binder or whatever works for you, some people type them into their cell phone and their memos, just keep track of them and pull them out. I encourage you, every time you do a launch, you finish your book, you implement a new marketing strategy, you learn new technology. Let's make sure you do a review and learn process. It can really be the defining point between a great year and what I think a lot of you want to have this year, which is an epic year. Now, I want to talk about 3 things that are critical for us as we move into 2016. I want to credit some of the people in my life that have just made such a powerful difference. So the 3-part process I'm going to talk about right now is what I call SOS, and it stands for systems, operations, and sponsorship. Now, let's start with the first one, systems. If you want to know someone who is incredible at systems and is a systems thinker, it's Lisa Menini, a friend of mine. And Lisa is with the Evolutionary Business Council as well. She's actually going to be speaking on February 20th at the Evolutionary Business Council in San Diego, which is attached to the Global Influence Summit that I'm hosting on the 18th and 19th in San Diego with Teresa de Grosbois and the EBC. And Lisa is just incredible in terms of how she handled systems. And I remember talking with Lisa once about, I know why systems are so important, but I was talking with her about how systems can absolutely leverage opportunities for you and create dramatic differences. And she went through a number of questions with me that really started to identify where I had great systems in my business and where I was lacking systems. And I started to look at every action that I do in my business as an entrepreneur, as a speaker, and an author, to look at where I had duplication. Let me give you one example that just jumps out of my mind. It was when I did my first book on Toby's terms in 2010. I didn't know what I didn't know, to be to be really honest. I had no idea how to market a book. It was my first book. I had just learned to be an author. I knew how to market my business. I'd been in business for a long time by then and was marketing my very successful speaking business. So I knew that part. The book world was new. And there was tasks that I started to notice that I was doing over and over again. For example, with a book signing, like many of you have done, there's certain actions that you do when you're planning a book signing tour. You have a plan for the overall tour. You ensure you order enough books. You connect with all the bookstores that are going to be on your tour stops. Make sure they have books. You send the staff a reading copy so the staff love your book before you show up. You talk with them about placement of your book in the store. You decide whether you're going to do a typical signing or a presentation, which usually sells a lot more books. You decide things like, are you going to include a charity component for your book? For example, we often will encourage people, as my friend Joe Dibley does, to buy a book and buy a second book, which we then donate to charity. You create the marketing materials, or like we do, hire out for that, because that's not my genius. You create the press release or have your PR person do the press release. We market it. We do Facebook event pages. The list goes on and on. And I did the first one, did all the steps, and hadn't written it down. And then I had to plan the second one. So on the third stop on the tour, I finally realized, I need a system for this. And I was noticing that I was contacting a lot of the same media people. I didn't have a good spreadsheet. So what we did right at that point is created all of our systems for book signings. We created a solid media list. That is gold for us. That list in an Excel spreadsheet of all our media contacts has been beyond helpful. We created a list of activities that happen with every single book signing. And we got very detailed about it. In fact, we even took digital pictures of what the table should look like. Here's the real bonus of creating that one particular system, is it then allowed me to hand it off to my family who were helping me that day, or to our assistant who was there. We could hand that whole system off for somebody to do, because that's their genius, not mine. So systems can free up time. They can make sure there's continuity. That was the other piece that I really liked, is that we had a similar look and feel to every book tour stop. Now, we did review and learn processes along the way, and we tweaked and refined that model until we came up with a model. But look for the actions that you do in your business over and over again and create solid systems. And if you come from the mindset, I was talking about Harrison Klein earlier, my dear friend, when you come from the mindset of this is helping you be successful, it's making things easy for you, it's helping you be congruent with your values, you will find that that system will really support you. We then took that learning just from the book signing example and applied it to every other aspect of our life. Now, I've become a real fan and lover of Google Docs, and I resisted that for so long. I have no idea why, but I love Google Docs because I work in collaboration on the large majority of my projects, and it allows me to work with my team who are not all in the same country. We live all over. We're in 5 different time zones. And so it allows us to work on the same document and be right on top of things. The other system tool that I created was actually audioing my presentations and turning them into products, looking for where I can cross-purpose my information. One of my friends, Tina Dietz, who is she's amazing. She does voiceovers, and she helps people take their written word and turn it into audio products, which I love. And that got me thinking, I need to make sure that I'm really being systematic about that. I speak. That's my main core of my business. And so why wasn't I using the different speaking opportunities to create products or to create informational tools that people could use? Now, let me check in. We got lots of comments coming. This is great. Lana says, Tina is great. I agree with you. I love Tina. Roland says, I learned not to think locally when I have a global service. That is so important. What a great example of mindset, how we perceive things. Roland, giving first generates that energy that brings to me. It's so true. Giving is actually, I love what you said about that, Roland, because giving has been a foundation of our business. And we actually created a program about, I guess, 8 years ago now called the Hammond International Giving. And so what we do, our corporate giving program, is we often provide presentations to nonprofit organizations and schools that don't have a budget. So we donate our services, we donate our books, but we also donate our time in other ways. And I would agree with what Roland said. When you come from a place of offering value and service and giving, the energy that's created around that and around you is off the charts. But what it also does is I have found that when we come from that place, there's a lineup of champions that just can't wait to give to you and to support you and be your champion. Annette says, what technology do you use to record your presentations? Great question. Here's what I use. Actually, several things. One of them, believe it or not, is this, my iPhone. And you might be thinking, your iPhone, that it doesn't have great quality. Here's what we did. We bought an app. And let me make sure I get the spelling correct for you. It's a Rode. I think it's R-O-D-E. Let me just check the app here. Rode app. Yep. Rode microphones. And you can buy that. It's a little lapel microphone for $65. We bought it from Amazon. It hooks into your cell phone. And then you download the Rode, R-O-D-E, Rode microphone app. It's free. And when you are doing speaking engagements, I just wear the lapel mic for my cell phone, put my cell phone in my pocket. It records amazing quality. You upload it through Dropbox to your computer so that you can edit it. You can snap on a bumper at the beginning and end. You can snap on music. And that has been one tool that I use. And my primary tool that I use to record different teleconferences, presentations, even sometimes webinars, so that I have a backup audio. It's a product by Zoom, Z-O-O-M. And it's a little recording device about probably about twice the size of your cell phone. And it records in studio quality. And it's got a microphone buffer on it. It's fabulous. So we will actually put that in the room that I'm speaking in. And I've spoken in all kinds of venues, massive conference rooms, school gyms. It doesn't seem to matter where the venue is. The sound quality is incredible. Cost about $300. And we have recorded so many products on that. Lana says, fabulous resource. Roland, thank you, Charmaine. You're welcome. One of the other pieces that we use are platforms like Webinar Jam or teleconference services. The teleconference, it sounds a bit tinny, a bit echoey. So when I want a really professional product, I use my Rode mic on my cell, or I use my H4. And can you repeat the Zoom, please? Absolutely. And you know what I'll do? How about this? In the handout notes, why don't I put a link to Zoom's website? It's called an H4 that we have, but that's probably the H4 recording device. When did we get that? 5 years ago, maybe? So there are even newer models, smaller models, and it's made by a company, Zoom, Z or Z, O-O-M. And they have many different products that are all digital recorders. And I'll send you that information, because I would suggest, if you are speaking, record everything. Just record everything. It's not only a great way of creating products, which is part of systematization, it's also a great way to improve your skills. I listen to my recordings over and over again. And one of the things I discovered is sometimes my brain will hook on a certain word. I was speaking one day and every other word was awesome. And it's kind of a funny story. My husband had to edit the audio for me. And he started counting. Some of you, Benita, I know you know Chris, so you're going to love this story. But he started counting the number of times I said awesome. And I can't even tell you how many, because I'm too embarrassed already. But when I came back into the room that he was working in, he fast forwarded the word awesome. So all you heard was awesome, 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 awesome. He put them all together for me. I never said awesome in another presentation for many, many months after that. So there's huge value to being able to record. Janet says, thank you. And if you can put the information about the recording tools in your handout, that would be great. I sure will. I'll put any of the links I mentioned and the recording And Janet says, I haven't recorded any of my presentations or workshop speaking yet, but I would like to use them as a product. That's a great way. And you know, Zoom, this product that we're on right now, Webinar Jam, you'll see later, this records a video for you. So what you're seeing, for those of you that are with me live today, you're seeing this on screen, and it uploads to YouTube. So this video, shortly after we're done, will be uploaded to video. What a great way for you to create a product. Benita says, LOL, my word is so. I'm with you on that one as well. And Deborah says, mine too, Benita, so. And Roland says, the universal, you know. Absolutely, I hear that a lot. Denise says, mine is absolutely, yes. And it, you know, it reminds me, I don't know if you saw that video. There was a video on YouTube a while ago with a little boy, and he was on the Ellen show, and he kept saying the word apparently. So what I learned is that kids, adults, we get stuck on words, but the value of watching yourself is that you can be aware of that and change those behaviors. Annette says, my word is well. And yes, Jenna says, I don't want to be negative, but be careful about giving too much for free. People need to know that there's a monetary value to what you share. And I've had issues with that in the past. Yeah, you want to make sure that you're being diligent around what you share and what you're maintaining as a product. I love that comment. I also know that for me as a speaker, what's important for me in my promotion and marketing is to speak. So I give a lot of speaking through webinars and teleseminars and videos that are given to people. And I share them as value so people can learn. But it's also because for me, part of our marketing strategy is I get work when I speak. And so you have to look at your business model. Be really clear on what intellectual property you're keeping as a product, as Jenna said, and then what intellectual property you're putting out there for the world to share and know and fall in love with you. Let's see here. We've got some more questions. Me too. I give and I share value. I've learned many years ago. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I wrote an ebook, and it was you know, certainly not my best effort. I was just learning on how to write ebooks. And I really wanted to sell this ebook, and I didn't give it away. I didn't give parts of it away. I sold a handful of them. When I started to give parts of the ebook away and just give them away, when people would register for my program, I gave the PDF away, and my sales went like this. So you really want to know what you're giving away for value, and how can you, for me, it's to look at how can I create relationship with people? How can I be a champion for them? How can I serve them? And also, how can I give value, and what ways can I give that value? So speaking is one, books is another, articles, blogs. So look at not only what you're sharing with the world, but the ways in which you're sharing it. I have one friend who doesn't do any video. She doesn't like doing video. She'd be exquisite on video, but it's just not her thing. It's not her platform. She is amazing on audio. And so she does all her sharing of information through audio, through speaking, and through the written word, but doesn't do any video. So that's the other piece, is we want to know what we're comfortable with and work in the platforms that also work with our audience. Awesome. Jenna says, me too. The first book I wrote, I gave away. And Jenna says, great point. You want folks to fall in love with you. You know, when you're on a mission to help make the world a better place, that's so true. We want to build relationships with people. And we've got more comments. Wow, at this point, more than 50,000 downloaded. That's incredible. Way to go. Really helped to get the word out about what I do. Absolutely. So I love these comments about sharing and giving, adding value, and providing service to the world. And when you can wrap systems around that to free up some time, to free up energy, that's number one of the SOS. Number two is operations. So what do I mean by operations? Want to make sure that you've got a team. I mentioned earlier, I have teams in different countries. I have a web team. I have a marketing director. I have PR services, my 3 publishers, my graphic design team. I have sort of the legal end that helps me draw up contracts and things like that. And the list goes on. So part of operations is building on the systems and making sure that you've got the right people working with you. And they don't all have to be full-time staff. We have one full-time staff, Julie, who many of you have met and know I just love her. Julie is just such an important member of our team, and she's full-time with us and came on to help us with our first tour. And we just, she brought so much value to our company and to our team that, you know, she just needs to stay with us. So now Julie's role has greatly expanded, and but we also contract some services out. So like graphic design is one, accounting. Now, the other part of operations, here's a big learning that I had, is that we not only have to work in where our genius and our focus and our energy is, but we also have to know if we're a starter or a finisher. So let me just ask that question to all of you. Who on the call today, the webinar today, is what you would call a starter? You're great at getting things started. Sometimes the implementation can be a little bit of a challenge. So who's our starters and who's our finishers? Let's just hear from you on that. And I'll talk a little bit about why this is important to know. I heard from some of you on the chat box that you've got 10 books inside your head and you've got lots of projects that you're sort of juggling and balancing. I'm an example of a starter. I get inspiration. I have an idea. I come out of the gates just running with this idea. And then another idea. Can anyone relate to me? Tell me I'm not alone on that one. Okay, Janice says starter. Marion, starter. Annette says great starter. Joyce, starter. Who else have we got here? Rita Ann, I'm starters and have lots unfinished. I can relate to you on that. Implementer, Sylvia, I'm an implementer. Glenda, starter. We've got starter. Hey, we have a finisher finally. Okay, Roland. Roland is our finisher, getting way better at starting. Now, and Jenna says both. Awesome. You're absolutely right, Jenna. She says, I love the big ideas, but it has to be executed to feel good. That is so true. And this is why we do the review and learn process. What are the incompletes? As you go into 2016, what are the incompletes? What do you still need to do? One of the things that I love about our business is I get to do a lot of media. And I've been trained by my dear friend and media coach, Sean Duperrin. Lots of you have heard me talk about Sean before. I just love Sean and how she's taught me to not only work with media, build relationships, and be great when I'm on TV and radio, but what she's taught me is kind of the operations, what I need to be doing behind the scenes of getting media opportunities. And so I was really good at getting the press release out there. But it was the implementation, the execution, or the follow-up that was causing me the struggle. I would get the press release out there, but I wouldn't do what Sean teaches, which is then to call the news desk, to call the reporter, to stay in touch, to build a relationship. So when Sean taught me that, I went, oh, this is incredible information. Now, I knew that doing those follow-up calls, if it were left to me, probably wouldn't happen consistently because I'm on stages speaking, I'm busy with other projects. So that's where we hired someone who has that genius. That's an example of, if you're a starter, you want to look to play with finishers. And that was a lesson I learned from Sean. Sean's going to be speaking at the Global Influence Summit in San Diego. I can't wait for that session. Who is this person? Sean Duperrin, Dr. Sean Duperrin, and her company is Sean TV. And Sean has an E on the end of it, SHAWNE, Duperrin. And I'll put Sean's link in the notes as well. Wendy says, the last week has been a week to identify and process my incompletes. Way to go, Wendy. Some I will delegate, and some are on their way to being finished. And that's part of it, isn't it? Is looking at what we can finish, what we're going to bring with us. Maybe what incompletes can stay incomplete. Maybe they don't need to be done now. The idea came out, and you were hot after that idea, and maybe now the idea isn't where you're at. So know if you're a starter or finisher. That helps you create what you need to create in your operational side of the business, and then find people who have the missing link. I'm a starter. I make sure I go out and find the finishers to help me. The last part of SOS. So we've talked about systems. We've talked about operations. Number 3 is sponsorship. I love talking about sponsorship. The reason I love it is because sponsorship has helped my business so much. There is a mindset out there that sponsorship is just for nonprofits and charities. And I'm going to tell you that's not true. I'm a for-profit company. I'm incorporated. I've had my business for 20 years. And while giving and philanthropy is a huge part of how we run our business, my business is not a nonprofit company. And we learned about sponsorship. I learned about it many years ago because I actually, before I opened my company, I was a contract negotiation specialist for the provincial government. What does that mean? I used to give away government money to nonprofit organizations that were being funded by the government. So I got to learn about sponsorship from the side of the sponsor. And then I went to running a nonprofit organization. And I got to learn about sponsorship from being the director of a nonprofit organization and having to apply for sponsorship and go and fundraise and get dollars. And then when I opened my company, of course, I started getting calls from nonprofits and different projects and organizations to sponsor their projects. And then I was watching Oprah one day, and at the end of the show, you know where they bring the credits up and they say, Oprah's clothing sponsored by, Oprah's jewelry sponsored by, and the list went on and on. And at the time I was planning to do my book tour. This is in 2010. And I thought, jeepers, if Oprah can do it, maybe so can Charmaine Hammond. So that was what Jack Canfield calls a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. I set this goal that I'm going to learn how to do sponsorship, and I'm going to find sponsorship to help me fund my book launch. And that's exactly what I did. And we had 40 sponsors who funded the food for my big launch party, who did all the printing for my marketing materials, all my clothing. I don't know if Glenda's here from Caprice Consignment, but I know some of you on the webinar today know Glenda, and Glenda was my champion from day one. She sponsored all of my clothing, so I looked great wherever I went. And then Deborah Karash from Verve Salon, I know some of you know Deborah. She had her team doing my hair, my makeup, my nails, my massages. I had people providing my healthcare products for me. I had travel covered, basically 40 incredible champions and sponsors who did a few things. Many of them donated a product or a service that we needed for our business and the tour, so it offset my costs. The second thing, we had cash sponsors. We had sponsors who sponsored mentoring for me so that I could learn what I needed to learn. For example, about public relations, PR, about creating great marketing materials, about running a book business, learning about the publishing world. Sponsorship is huge. Janet says, I love Glenda and Caprice. I do too. Now, and then Jenna says, oh, holy cow, that's wonderful. And then when the tour that we just did, 6 weeks, 14,000 kilometers, 100 community stops. We donated hundreds and hundreds of books because of our partners and our sponsors. Petland Canada was amazing. They raised funds called Toonie for Team Toby. My dog's name is Toby. So they they sold little cutout paw prints, paper paw prints in their stores for $2. Hence the Toonie for Team Toby. In Canada, we have a $2 coin called the Toonie. And they raised $10,000 for our tour, which put our children's books into schools across North America. Isn't that an amazing way to collaborate and secure sponsorship? And what was the value you gave to the sponsors? Great question. Well, here we are months later, and we're talking about our sponsors because we love them so much. That was a huge help for sponsors, helping get their name out there, helping connect them. We did a lot of things, and I'm actually going to be talking about this at the Global Influence Summit, talking about the system we need, the system I use to find sponsors, build relationships with sponsors, recognize sponsors, and secure the sponsorship arrangement. That's what I'll be talking about at the Global Influence Summit. There really is a system, and I've been learning about this now for 6 years. And this Million Acts of Kindness tour was a fully sponsored tour. We had all of our hotel rooms for my team because Chris and I traveled in the 32-foot motorhome that was sponsored by Fraser Way RV. So we're traveling in the motorhome, my team's in hotels. All of that was sponsored. Media was sponsored, marketing materials, graphic design. And it starts with a relationship. So one of the things I'm going to give you all for homework, will you agree to do a little bit of homework for me so that you can jumpstart 2016? You can write in the chat box if you're willing to do a little bit of homework here. The first thing I want you to do to start learning about sponsorship is I'm going to send you some links with some resources that you can read, and you'll start to get an idea of sponsorship. The second piece is I want you to write a list of everything you need for your business, or your book tour, or your launch. Deborah says yes, Catherine says ready. So I want you to create a list of what you need and what would help you if somebody else was covering the cost of a particular item: printing, marketing materials, your standing banners, gas for your vehicle, whatever it is, your hairstyles, whatever it is, write the list. Then the second piece of homework, this is another list. I want you to write a list of everywhere where you spend money, personally and for your business, every month. And so what I mean by that is things like your cell phone, because we had an amazing telecom company who I have to share some love with right now, TELUS, who is my telecommunications company. On our tour, they sponsored all of our Wi-Fi and the equipment I needed to be linked in 24/7 from a motorhome in remote areas. We could always be in touch on social media, doing my live streaming, doing our radio show. And that was because TELUS came on board and supported our tour as well. So I want you to write down, your phone company, insurance, where you buy your clothing, where you buy your food, where you get your hair done, where you buy your pet supplies, all of the places that you spend money in a month. And then with a highlighter, highlight the ones that you have a relationship with. So for example, do you know Bob, who is the general manager of the grocery store you shop at? So write their name and the type of relationship that you have with them. Because what we need to start doing is finding sponsors that we already have a relationship with. And I'm going to send you some more information on the next steps. This is a really big conversation around sponsorship. I'll be teaching how to do that at the Global Influence Summit. But it really starts with getting a handle on what we need, what we have to offer, and where we currently have business relationships that we might be able to leverage. And Nancy's asking, will there be a replay of this? Absolutely, Nancy. It'll go up on YouTube right away. I'll send you all the link. You can listen to it as many times as you like. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send you a link to a webinar I did last week in this series that was all about sponsorship. The whole webinar was how to find corporate sponsors for your speaking or book tour. I'll send the link for that in the handouts so that all of you can access that information. Sponsorship was the third part of the SOS that I wanted you to start thinking about as you move into 2016. And it's all about collaboration, how we build influence, how we build relationships. One of my favorite, I think the expert on influence building, I know. The expert on influence building is Teresa de Grosbois. She actually wrote a book called Mass Influence. And it's an incredible book. It will just teach you what you need to know about building influence and also building collaborations. And you need to see Teresa speak on this topic because it'll shift your perspective about how you build relationships with people who have influence. And they're the people that you need to be able to support your business, support your tours, support your book launches. And Teresa is also going to be speaking on this topic at the Global Influence Summit. So we've covered today the review and learn process, 4 questions you've got to ask yourself. And then we talked about the SOS model, how we can build in systems into the work that we do and the way that we work, how we can expand on our operations. And then we also talked about sponsorship and how important that is for your business as you move into 2016. And that it's all grounded in relationships and collaboration. That's how we run our business, and it has always served me well. I want to share with you a really cool opportunity that we have for the Global Influence Summit. Everyone mark these dates down, February 18th and 19th in San Diego. I'm really excited to be hosting the Global Influence Summit. 12 incredibly transformational speakers and leaders, some of them I've mentioned today, who are going to be talking about branding, how to be a rock star on radio shows, how to be mastering media, how to use internet marketing to really create the best year ever in 2016, how to use social media in a way that you've never used it before. I'll be talking about sponsorship. The whole goal of this event is to help people build influence in mass proportions, and to really come from that place of giving, that when we give influence and we be a champion for other people, they start to line up and, of course, be a champion for you. Catherine saying, I can't wait for San Diego Global Influence Summit. I can't wait either, Catherine. I'm so excited you're going. So let me share with you an offer we have today. We are having a price hike on January 1st. So here's what we have for our offer. We are giving away a $75 scholarship, actually 10 of them. And what the scholarship does is we have some sponsors for our Global Influence Summit. We have incredible sponsors for this summit, and they are providing us with 10 $75 scholarships. What this does is it takes $75 off your $297 registration. So that means that you can attend for only $220. Here's the cool part. You get to bring a friend with you as well. So for $220, you and a friend get to come to the Global Influence Summit, 2 solid days, 12 speakers, and I can guarantee you this event will really, really transform your business. And the people that you'll meet, you'll be able to start building collaborations and relationships right there. Because of our sponsors and our incredible speakers and partners, we also have a great array of other products that can help you. So Teresa is giving her book Mass Influence away, and actually her 30-day program, Influence Building Program. I'm doing the program right now that Teresa has, and it's incredible. I thought I knew a lot about influence building, and let me tell you, Teresa is just teaching me stuff I never knew, and great program. Marla Tabaka is giving this ebook that's all about success for entrepreneurs. Of course, you'll be getting my sponsorship program and a 1-year access to my Your Book as a Business program group mentoring calls. Some of you actually, I know some of you on the webinar today participated in those monthly calls. And it's a great way for you to be able to build your business, stay in touch with other authors and speakers. So the offer is on the screen right now. It's today only. So it's $220 because you're getting a $75 scholarship. You go on and register on the link. You should be seeing a link on your screen. I will also send you a link immediately after in the follow-up notes with all the resources. You go onto the website, register today. We will immediately refund you your $75 so that you get the scholarship, and I guarantee you're going to have an amazing time. That is what I wanted to share with you today. So here's my promise to all of you. Let's just make 2016 the best year ever. Let's go out, change the world, have a great time while we're doing that. Come from a place of value and service, and let's make 2016 a great year. Please connect with me on social media so that I can be a champion for you. And again, it has been awesome. I'm going to use that word once. It's been so wonderful to be with you all. Really, really enjoyed all the comments, all the chatter on the chat box. Have a happy New Year, everyone. Oh, Nancy says, these are great. I'm going to promote that. Any chance we can pay to attend virtually? You know, we're not doing this as a virtual event, and here's why. We want people to really be in the room together, building influence together. So this event won't be live streamed. I want to let you know, we're also going to be doing a webinar series. You'll get information about that. Catherine says, thank you, Charmaine. You are awesome. Here's the word. And Deborah says, thank you, Charmaine. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, Deborah. Jenna says, LOL, use it where appropriate. I agree. I think it's appropriate now. Joyce says, thank you, Charmaine. Roland, very cool, Charmaine. Thank you. You are all so welcome. That's what it's all about. Let's share our knowledge together. Let's support one another to make 2016 the best year ever. Happy New Year. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.